Welcome to Rick's Pest Control. This is a follow-up to the previous YouTube video that I did concerning the attack on Judith Hobson at the Kellie-Jay Keen Women's Rally in Auckland last year. There's been a lot of controversy because the attacker, the offender, who we're not allowed to name, was given a discharge without conviction. Now, the offender has been named by Kellie-Jay Keen over in the UK, so outside New Zealand's jurisdiction. There's nothing anybody here can do about that, but the name is not freely available in New Zealand, which links back really to the discharge without conviction scenario. So let's discuss the discharge without conviction. It's probably not a good name to be calling it a discharge without conviction because it makes it sound like nothing at all happens when probably that's not really true. So a discharge without conviction could be thought of as a non-publicly reported conviction. So what I mean by that is that if this offender does anything else and appears before the courts again, the fact that he was found guilty of the offence but not convicted will be a matter of record for the court through the Ministry of Justice, and it'll be a record that will be undoubtedly kept on the police computer systems. So for the purposes of consequences, so what happened to the offender, what the consequences are to be visited on him through being found guilty but not convicted, is that will remain as a black mark on his record and may be taken into account and mustered against him if he's sentenced for any other offending in the future. The only real difference between this and a conviction is the fact that the Ministry of Justice still records the fact that the person's been found guilty, the fact that they've been convicted, which doesn't really mean much, but what does mean a lot is it's publicly reported. So when the information is asked, for example, in New Zealand in many instances for things like employment, housing, things like that, private members or private organisations or other government organisations can ask the person to disclose their criminal record. And if they did that with this offender, then their offences would be publicly reported. So they haven't got away entirely scot-free, but they have got away without the usual consequences of having their life made difficult by having to report a criminal conviction in the context of maybe getting a job or in the context of getting housing or some other service or entering into any sort of agreement where disclosure of criminal convictions is concerned. A whole range of things could apply. For example, liquor licensing, if you apply for a hotel manager's license, all kinds of things like that. So although the offending will not be reported publicly, he'll still have the private consequences. Now, where I have an issue with this is if you look at the difference between the two, what they're saying is that it's in the public interest to have this person marked for future condemnation as far as criminal activity goes and as far as that is apprehended by the police or the Ministry of Justice. But it's not in the public interest that this guy's employment opportunities are limited. The problem that I have with that is that I would imagine that if this offender was to apply for a job in an aged care facility, the fact that this person has been violent, throwing 3 punches into the head of a 71-year-old woman, that's very relevant to that kind of occupation. So, and the other thing that's taken into consideration with reporting criminal convictions is that normally, let's take the example of employment, or even better example probably is applying for a liquor license. So, for example, if you applied for a customs license to manufacture alcohol, you have to apply to the customs department to be able to do that. And one of the criteria that they look at is whether you're going to be able to pay the tax. So they ask for a record of your criminal convictions, and if you are found to have, say for example, been convicted of fraud or tax evasion or something like that, then you're probably not going to be given a license from customs. And the point I'm making by that is that those convictions, that offending, is directly relevant to whether you would pay the excise tax that you're trusted with paying if you have a customs license. So if, for example, the Customs Department found out that you'd been convicted of willful damage, for example, that would probably not be likely to affect your ability to hold a customs license because it's not a dishonesty offence. So the type of offending is relevant to the public reporting in terms of the consequences that may be mustered against you. In this case, I think there is a direct relevance between whether this person should be allowed to work in areas where there's vulnerable people, especially vulnerable aged care adults, and I think that as a matter of record, that's something that should be reported publicly. So the difference between the discharge without conviction and actually being convicted, really that's the only difference between the two, is whether it's publicly reported or not. In this case, I think they got it wrong, and hopefully someone will appeal it. I'm assuming that the New Zealand Police could appeal, but probably only with the Attorney General's approval. So we'll see how that goes. So I hope that this clarifies the position for people who are wondering about how that all works. And if you enjoyed this content, press like and subscribe to this channel to see more content as it drops right here exclusively on YouTube. Till next time, take care.